Are we recording?
We are.
Yep. Okay. I'll get started then. So my name's James Pepper, here at the Cannabis Control Board here in Vermont. Today is July 19th, 2023. It's 1:01 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. So before we get started, just need to add an executive session to the agenda to review a social equity recommendation by the staff. We'll put this after the executive director report, but before we vote on the recommendations. And just as a reminder, we don't make any decisions in executive session. Share sensitive information about an applicant, and then we listen to the rationale, and it's an opportunity for us to ask questions of our counsel and our executive director. And then we'll come back out and take a vote on that decision. Others. So I just would start by saying how saddened I am by the damage done by the storm. It's just a very deep sorrow that I've been feeling. Waves of volunteers dismantled homes in our downtowns. I will say that I'm very proud to live in this state. Such resilience ingrained into its spirit. Before the sun was up at my house on Tuesday, every single one of my neighbors that stopped by was checking in, bringing over their shop vacs and dehumidifiers, and then signing up for a shift to help out downtown. I think everyone who's joined us today is all too familiar with the double standard that applies to cannabis businesses. You all are tax-paying and revenue-generating businesses that are providing a critical service to Vermonters and people that visit our state. And yet, at least at the federal level, at the best of times, you're ignored. And at the worst of times, you're treated as criminal enterprises. My heart breaks for Lauren, Nick, and Angela, and Hope, all of the cultivators, everyone that's invested so much of their own money and sweat equity into this endeavor. They're now being told that the relief opportunities that are available to other businesses are not going to be available to you. There are some state efforts being organized. I'm sure it's not going to be enough. I urge every impacted business to please fill out our flood damage assessment form. We've sent it around. It's also available on our website at ccb.vermont.gov/July 2023. Close contact with the governor's office and our friends in the legislature. And, we really are going to have to demonstrate for them and document for them the damage that was done. We have any hope of unlocking the funds for it. As I mentioned in our last meeting, all new outdoor and mixture cultivation applications had to be complete by July 1st to be eligible for licensure this year. We reviewed all pending applications on July 3rd. And while many were complete and were on the list for today, there are a handful that did not make this deadline. If you fall into this second category, you're going to be receiving an email from the CCB through Salesforce indicating that we will not continue to process your application this year. You can reapply when these cultivation tiers reopen, I think in December, and we will carry forward your application fee and apply it to that new application. A few quick comments about Act 65. The tax department has updated its tax guidance document to reflect the new changes to the taxes on vaping liquids and devices, and some of the other tax modifications that apply to outdoor cultivators. You can take a look at that. We linked to it in our guidance page on the website. If you have any questions, it's best to go straight to the tax department. That's tax.business@vermont.gov, or their phone number is 802-828-2551. Although now that I think of it, their building was destroyed. So I don't know if that phone number is still good.
It might be routed to where.
Routed to a voicemail inbox.
Act 65 also directed the CCB to work with a number of stakeholders to develop recommendations to improve the medical program. We've been trying to schedule these to accommodate as many people as possible. The first one is going to be on Tuesday, August 8th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. These will be fully remote, and we will update our calendar with the links to participate as soon as Nelly gets back, actually. Other than that, I just have to approve the minutes from our regular meeting on June 26, 2023, special meeting on June 30th.
So move.
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I think everyone remembers from our last meeting that we decided to hold off on voting on the proposed rule amendments. And we've received significant public comment since that last meeting about some of the changes. So I thought, Brendan, Gabe, I'd turn things over to you to review those changes and some of the comments we received.
Yeah, and just while we make that transition, Nelly is out of office today. I'm trying to make sure cameras are off and folks are muted as we accept them into the lobby. But please remember, please check to see if you're muted right now. We don't want to overhear conversations that you might not want us to hear on your end of this
Or to be on
virtual.
public record.
Sure. So please just check, make sure you're muted. I think everybody is right now. Please don't put hands up until it's time for a public comment period after we look at this next round of rule amendments. At that point, there will be an opportunity to comment on where we think we are. But we're down some admin on this meeting, and there's over 70 people watching. So please work with us. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're broadcasting in a way everybody can see. Thank you for being with us, and thank you to everybody who has participated and offered comments. It's been really helpful to the rule development process. Just by way of history, most people here are familiar with what's gone on. The board took up the rule at its last regular meeting. There were enough changes made or proposed changes made in response to comments received that the board determined it would be prudent to repost an updated version reflecting the changes it intended to make in response to comment. And that was done on July 7th. Draft notices went out to all the known interested parties. People who knew we were interested had their email addresses, and everybody who had sent comments earlier. And we very much appreciate the association's role in getting the word out to make sure everybody knew about the new posting. We also extended the deadline for comment formally until the end of Monday, but we've continued receiving comments up to this morning. So what I'd like to do is not repeat what was done last month, but instead focus on the comments that have been received since last month, together with a handful of comments that didn't get airtime, just to make sure that they're addressed. We won't address in an itemized fashion every last comment. Some were technical in nature or typographical in nature, and some of those we appreciate, but we'll correct in background. In Rule 1, I should note that we did have a comment asking that the board revisit some renewal timelines and windows. I think that was looked at seriously, but because it caused or would cause follow-on system issues isn't something that I think we're prepared to incorporate in this draft. Turning to Rule 1.3.3, we received a question or a comment from one person asking that the provision proposed here that would require that any hydrocarbon extraction occur in a building under the jurisdiction of the Division of Fire Safety, which is sort of synonymous with a public building. Somebody asked if that grandfather provision be offered for it. The sense is that the appropriate thing to do is not to write a grandfathering provision for a single case, but rather to encourage a person affected to use the existing waiver application process to have an individual evaluation of whether a waiver is appropriate in that circumstance. Turning to the next comment that we got that hasn't got any airtime yet is a pretty small one. At Rule 1.11.3, the board had proposed to clarify, pardon me. Sorry, I just got myself in the wrong copy. There you go. The board had proposed to articulate the standard for overcoming presumptive disqualification. It was suggested by one commenter that it would be clearer to rephrase that as a threat to public safety or the proper functioning of the market. And that's a stylistic consideration that can probably be considered offline, but I just wanted to note it with appreciation. Additionally, we had a helpful notice that Rule 2.2.2, which I won't show, contains a vestigial reference to 1.4.5 that would be removed. I just want to note that that also won't be talked about too much out loud, but is technical in nature and is appreciated. And I think that's everything going on in Rule 1. Most of the meat of the discussion, really all of it, is in Rule 2. So I want to begin at the top of that rule and walk you through what has been the subject of more recent or unaddressed comments. So let's see. The first of those is that 2.2.10, through many comments emphasizing that the costs of labeling changes are not trivial to small businesses and asking that sort of things be either one or done or done more simply or grandfathered, various versions of ways to reduce costs. In the interim, the agency has had discussions with the Department of Health and other interested stakeholders who were required to consult and also looked at where things are in terms of ASTM uniformity. I think it remains a goal to make an update to labeling requirements, but the sense has been that we want to do that all at once or not at all, and that we're probably not ready at this time. So what you'll see and what you do see in the new proposal posted is a withdrawal of nearly all of the labeling amendments. So the hope is that that would offer some stability to folks and reflects, I think, just realism about the time it would take to coordinate with the Department of Health and other interested people. So again, important thing to understand about this is that many of the labeling requirements have been withdrawn, or what would have been the changes to them. One commenter noted that Rule 2.2.10, which concerns labeling, should be combined with Rule 2.6.3, which also concerns labeling. That makes a lot of sense for the reasons that we talked about. Changes to the labeling requirements have in the main been withdrawn. So we'll make a note of that for the next go round. At 2.8.8, one commenter asked that, and sorry, let me try to get you there so you can see what we're talking about, that the allowances for employee samples be increased. And after a little bit of examination, we found that what we have are sort of high relative to the norm. And so the sense is that the sample allowance right now probably is adequate to purpose. Turning to 2.1.3. These are the amendments to definitions. There was a particular interest in the definitions of clone and a possible new definition of topicals. So let me find clone for you and start there. The recommendation is sort of half done already based upon feedback and editing already done. That is, it was recommended by the commenter that we strike the word female so that any cannabis plant, male or female, could be regarded as a clone under the definition, and that we strike the provision you see already stricken there, growing in water solution, as was recognized at a previous meeting. Clones are sold in loose soil, and that's fine, and they're still clones. Just wanted to note that topic about the definition of clones. The next item of interest, I think, was the definition of topicals.
Is everyone all right to strike the word female from that
Yeah.
definition?
Yes.
And this, okay, so it sounds like there's consensus that female should come out of the definition in conformity with the recommendation. There was a proposal to amend or add a definition of topicals that I think board members have seen in print, and I can kind of spare you that. Well, I guess it's short enough. I could read the proposal. It's been suggested that topical cannabis products be defined as a substance or substances not ingested or not injected or ingested, used on the skin or other membranes, or applied to the exterior or exposed surfaces. Examples include lotions, creams, balms, and patches. I think there might be some technical rephrasing that might be approached, but the basic idea is pretty straightforward.
I think so. It's a broad
Hi,
category.
this is Jessie Lynn.
Jesselyn, we're not taking public comment right now. I was gonna say that, yeah, I think we need a topical definition.
I just tried it on Monday, so 2 days ago for the first time. I had a migraine the last 2 days, but I'm not surprised by.
Sorry, everybody, about that. I had asked everybody to make sure that they were muted for that reason specifically. I think we need a topical definition. I think this makes sense. We have it as a product designated category on product registration. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And the basic contours that have been described. And I should say, usually when we ask you for a motion approving the text, it's with the caveat that the staff may make technical and typographical corrections. Inevitably, you find something even though.
Yes, of course.
Got the T's.
And that- So that would go with this as well. We may play with the wording, but the essential sense and policy, I think, is everybody's on board with. The next significant comment we got was about the vape pen prohibition at 2.6.3, and there was a suggestion made that be simplified in a way that could bear some consideration. I didn't know if members had any thoughts on that. And again, I apologize, I'm scrolling and talking at the same time.
I think the suggested language tweaks help to tighten that broad language, which in reading that comment from commenter, it made sense to me. It might give folks that are using vaporizer pens and wanting to understand what we mean by disposable versus one that you can use with have a battery and reuse it multiple times.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense to get a little bit more descriptive there. So that's a change that I'm happy to include in our proposal.
And for the benefit of people who might not be able to have seen the text suggested, it was that the definition be amended not to change very much, but to say disposable vape pens are prohibited. The disposable vape pens are defined as all-in-one pre-charged vape pens that include a battery and are not rechargeable, do not allow for refilling of e-liquids, oils, extracts, or distillates, or are not intended for multiple uses. So that would be the refinement that has been suggested.
Yep, agreed.
There were some recommendations heard about since our last meeting about testing requirements. And rather than getting deep into them, I want to note that based on all the feedback and talking with Carrie, the sense is that we should do what the new proposal does and defer more to guidance in order to give ourselves a little bit more flexibility as circumstances change, testing technology changes, et cetera. And because the laboratories are a fairly small community, it's a particularly fit topic for guidance because it's easy to make sure everyone directly affected is aware. So
Yeah, I know there's been some aspergillus issues. I think I've dug into the understanding what those issues are from a public health perspective, in addition to a cannabis business perspective. And I think while we might not be in 100% aligned with asks of the industry, I think we've got a path forward for that product to still find its pathway to market if it is testing at an action limit for aspergillus, and we will put that in guidance. I know, Gabe, that there is that 90-day window if we're going to change testing guidance, but I believe we have some language that helps us expedite that as long as it's not a public safety threat or something.
Yes.
Along those lines. Okay.
And so this brings us to, I think, 2.2.4 was probably the subject of the most comments that we heard. These are the health and safety. These would be the changes to the prohibited products and health, safety, and sanitation requirements. And a lot of comments were had from manufacturers and others interested in some of the products that would be affected, such as.
This meeting is being recorded and/or transcribed.
Please mute yourself. Please, we don't have mail today.
You've been muted. To unmute yourself, press *6.
I guess at the same time.
Once again, I apologize to everybody that could follow directions.
So I can help with that.
Sorry, Gabe.
Okay, so, sorry about that. So, I guess everybody's read and reviewed the comments that came in on 2.2.4. We knew when you decided to set this over this month that this was one of the topics that provoked that, and we wanted to make sure that we had time with it. So, that's where we are, and I guess I could, turn things over for any discussion that folks might think is appropriate, of that section. And the constraints on us because of the federal status of cannabis, et cetera, and the ability of other partner agencies to work with us are considerable and have been talked about.
So my mind has not been altered on F through, well, I guess I or J, the kind of meat and dairy sections. And again, we don't have the benefit of partnering the Department of Health on this. We just don't have the bandwidth, I think, to kind of open ourselves into potentially harmful food products. And I think that there is eventually going to be a path forward for these types of products. I think that we could find a way to get cross-trained or something, or compliance officers, and have very specific certifications for kitchens that are able to deal with meat and dairy products, very similar to they have in commercial kitchens. I don't think we're anywhere near that. We're under our current staffing resources. So, I understand the nature of the comments and the potential harm that, this change might have on specific types of products. But I don't feel like we can legitimately kind of put our seal of approval on any product that contains.
Especially because we don't have the expertise or the bandwidth, as you mentioned, to ensure that the kitchens or facilities that these products are being manufactured in, are being inspected and are up to standard. I think that there's, again, like I said last meeting, there's a couple operators, I'm sure, that go above and beyond, would have no problem passing these inspections or audits by the Department of Health or other similarly situated agencies. But we can't just allow certain operators to participate here and not let others. And this sets a path forward if we were to allow this, where somebody as well-intentioned as they are could be making these products in their garage with a hot plate and a cannabis license, and then there's a listeria problem. And then what are the ripple effects and repercussions from there if we put the state of Vermont seal on these products? And I'm not sure I'm there philosophically yet. I'm not philosophically opposed to having products in our marketplace, but we can't drag kicking and screaming, fortunately, in this instance, the health department into helping us. It's just where we are. I think it's fascinating that folks want us to play the role of the health department, and in some instances the FDA, when they don't think we're adequately staffed as is to do product registration. It doesn't logically make sense to me. And so, I know that this affects a handful of operators and a handful of registered products. I think we might have some. You've got some questions or had some questions.
I do. And then just on what you were saying, Pepper, about, cross-training of the staff, I am mindful of how much the body of knowledge that one person can know. I mean, there are already aware of and have to regulate the entire supply chain. So I think we should be realistic about what we ask them to do and to know and to be able to do well. But I did ask, and Bryn, maybe you can speak to this, like the number of products that we have that are currently in product registration that would be prohibited if this passes or once this is accepted. And then if we have I know we've only had this piece of inventory tracking for a couple weeks, but if we have any data on the sales of those products.
Yes, so I can speak to, not the entirety of 2.2.4, but the prohibition on products that contain meat or dairy, I can speak to, and there are 11 registered products, that would be prohibited by those portions of this rule. And just to put a finer point on it, there are actually only 4 distinct products, but in various sizes. So we have a few sort of take and bake cookies or other types of sweets, and 1 ice cream product that's registered. And so those would be prohibited. We were able to go into the inventory tracking system, which has a limited amount of data at this point. And we saw that there have been no sales of those products in that limited time frame for which we have data.
That's helpful in terms of framing the context of the decision we're making.
And I think that's important because I think through some of the comments, whether it's the boilerplate messages that all of us have received or the unique and specific comments are framing this as an existential threat to our market. But when you look at the actual numbers, I don't necessarily agree that it is. And again, we are intending to update rules every year. If miraculously the health department decides they are interested in this in November, we could probably find a way for those products to enter at that point in time, but this is where we are now. And I think we need to just all understand how few, I'm not saying they're not important products or not important operators, but how few products of the hundreds we've registered this actually affects. I just think that context is very important. Other adult use states allow some of them. Those are completely different sets of circumstances. Most of them, if not all of them, did not have them present in the first year that they were operating as an adult use state. They were able to work towards that. And again, that context is important.
Any more discussion about the kind of latter half of 2.2.4? Okay. So I think we also saw a significant comment on 2.2.4E. And this is cannabis products that include nutritional supplements, drug products, additives that may provoke drug interactions, undermine shelf stability, or suggest curative effects. So, I'm torn on this. I've done, I've been trying to understand the comments, trying to understand how the FDA handles nutritional supplements and dietary supplements and the pathways that they go down and the rationale for it. We live in a world where there is just no longitudinal studies, short-term studies, clinical studies, preclinical studies on the interactions of nutritional supplements and THC and the endocannabinoid system. It is just, we are essentially running an experiment on Vermont citizens and the people that take these products. And we're doing it kind of in real time and having to respond after a crisis happens. The motivation for this, is it perfect? Of course not. This is the kind of thing that really does impede the kind of creativity of this market, the kind of products that people have grown accustomed to, the products that people want to use. And so, I'm somewhat persuaded by the comments that I've heard that even trying to implement something like 2.2.4E might be incredibly challenging for us in the product registration process.
You mean implement, meaning as it's currently written and deciding what a nutritional supplement is?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. What's flavoring, what happens, some things both on the generally recognized as safe list, but also is considered a nutritional supplement. What dosing could potentially be non-harmful. It's really hard for me to understand how how we move forward with this. But and I've looked at the other states. I sent around a link to kind of some of what other states are doing. Connecticut has very similar to 2.2.4E in their rules. They're kind of an outlier on that. Other states try and kind of give their cannabis commissions or boards discretion on deciding what a potentially harmful interaction might look like, and kind of on a case-by-case basis deny certain products from moving to the market. I don't know if that's I don't see how we can operationalize that either, just given the lack of science. So I'm kind of leaning towards just removing E, and just saying that we need to have very clear labeling, so that, and no kind of suggestion of curative effects, which is actually banned in other parts of the statutes. Just make sure that people aren't trying to make any health claims about, THC infused products with melatonin or something like that. That's where I'm leaning towards, but I'm very interested to hear everyone else's thoughts on this.
So I'm comfortable with that. To your point about experiments on Vermont citizens, I think people may choose to still consume those products, but I think what's reasonable is that they are aware of what they're consuming. And we do that through labeling. The other option would be to make sure that everything is tested, but I don't know what the availability of those tests are. So if it's the consensus of the group to remove it, then I'm fine with that. But I do think probably in the process of all the other labeling that we look at, we should consider more strict labeling for things with additives. And I just wanted to ask another question about E. Does E only reference edible products, or is it also inhalable products? It's in like sort of a general section, but I get the sense that it's maybe meant just for edibles, but that could be just my assumption.
I think it applies to everything but topicals.
Okay. So that's just something else to consider. Do we want people to be able to add melatonin or lion's mane or whatever it is to a vape product as well? We know, those generally recognizable as safe. We know what those do when you consume them for digestion, but we don't necessarily know what happens when they're inhaled. It's a different chemical reaction. So that's just something else to consider while we're talking about this particular one.
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable. I can't say that I'm not a little bit anxious. I think we're going to need some pretty detailed guidance, and I need folks to work with us if we're going to allow that. I know other states, especially that we talk to, wish that these were banned in their states.
Yeah. Or wish that the FDA would kind of step in and create a list of drugs.
But, I am, despite what some think out there, we are conscious of squashing creativity here. And I know that there are products out there. I think I'd be okay with eliminating E, striking E.
Gabe, I know that you did the background research on this. Can you share a little bit more about why this was added in?
I can. There are a lot of complexities because cannabis kind of falls outside not just the criminal drug law, but the food and drug law at large. It's very hard for many of the reasons we're talking about. There just is no data in many cases to simulate what FDA would do if it were assessing some of these products when they're combined. We know, for example, that there is considerable data that CBD itself alters the metabolism of many, many other things because it takes up one metabolic pathway. So the concern, I think, is often in drug interactions and combinations that we just don't have the means to assess, given all the resources in the world, candidly. That's sort of an FDA job, and they're not on that beat. So I think that's a concern. The flip side of this is you have also changed your definition of adulteration. And an expansive reading of that could be used in extreme circumstances to say the labeling and what's actually in the product are so inconsistent or unclear that we have to treat it as adulterated. We can't let it on the market. So I don't think it's that you'd have to allow everything, but it would be a less bright line without that section. As the chair has said, the states are all over the place. They're all over the place because of the same problem.
So you're saying if we struck E, because of the new adulterated proposed language, if somebody was either negligent in using a product or labeling it or grossly negligent, we would still have some needs to, work that back.
We would. I think one option would be to strike it entirely and rely upon the definition of adulteration and sort of use that as a general purpose authority to restrict registrations for safety reasons. Another alternative would be to strike part, but not all of E, to strike defining nutritional supplement. We all know is just notorious. We've spent hours trying to
Figure that out.
just adopt some external definition, and there isn't a very clear one. One option would be taking it out in part and leaving some of the other parts. So you wind up with a fairly subjective discussion of what an additive that may promote a drug interaction is. What's a drug product is very clear under federal law, so that's ambiguous and would be prohibited if we said nothing. But so those are sort of the options there: to strike it entirely and rely on the definition of adulteration, there to strike the ambiguous nutritional supplement part, which has just been a bear to define, or they're to leave it in the position that has drawn quite a few objections. So they're a group of bad choices, I guess.
I'm the only thing that makes me uncomfortable about striking E is that it would continue to allow people to perhaps develop products that have those nutritional supplements in inhalable products or
So-
added to inhalable products. And that would be one
Yeah.
caution area for me.
So I was looking at, so we changed rule 2.6.4 around additives.
Yep.
And it says instead of we're going to maintain an approved ingredients list for inhalable additives.
Okay.
We have a schedule of approved and disapproved ingredients. And, I think the ones that immediately come to mind are the kind of vitamin E acetate, the MCT oil, the propylene glycol. We could very easily add, some more of what other states have done around this, and it would be specific to vapes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'm comfortable with that.
Yep, I'm comfortable too, striking line on that in the adulteration language.
Bryn, is that going to be implementable, operational?
Yes, I mean, yes, as far as all of this is implementable. I do think that we ought to look at the definition of adulterated to make sure that it encompasses what you want it to encompass, if you're gonna rely on that to give us the authority to prohibit certain products. I don't know if that
You wanna do
is
that?
logically, you might want to go back in time to take a look at that. It's 2.1.3.
There we go. Thank you. So this wasn't originally envisioned as the vehicle for for catching what comes out of it, but that's what you have now.
We have rendered injurious to health in there.
That's kind of broad though, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is it does focus a lot on the integrity of packaging and storage and not on the actual intended content.
yeah.
So that, if you had a very clear and accurate label about a nonetheless very content, it might not hit that definition.
But trying to define that dangerous interaction is the challenge, right?
You could use sub 5 and say that you know, if there were a combination that didn't have the strength, quality, purity, ingredients, composition expected, I guess you could invoke sub 5 as well, but it has the same problem. It's very much focused on packaging and storage. You could consider adding a 6th subpart, or, you know, has content, you know, with significant potential to be injurious to human health or something like that, and a little bit more broadly than the packaging and storage focus it has now.
But then that's a discretionary point for us to decide.
Either way, we still end up outlining the details and guidance, right?
Yes,
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, well, so is, do you feel like you could workshop a sentence for sub 6 under adulterated that might get us to the point where if we have a known substance that, you know, if there's this, I mean, just like vitamin E acetate, you know, we didn't know for a while that it would, or maybe we did, that it would cause Ebola, but
Mhm.
it would give us the authority to,
It's a known substance.
Yeah, I mean, you could even do something like add a 6th that says contains an ingredient deemed by the board by guidance, you know, to be unfit for addition to cannabis products or something like that, and be, you know, basically get yourself the equivalent of what there is in other states where the commissioner or whomever can just deem things unsafe for good reason. That would work.
For the interim, that seems like the best
Yeah.
option,
okay.
It's
but
pretty broad. I don't know. how
we
Future
will,
board would implement that, though.
we will have to create some really thoughtful guidance
Yeah.
that we discuss, I think,
Yeah.
at length.
Legal jujitsu on the flag.
And I'm looking at other states and they do have this kind of similar language around non-cannabinoid additives that could increase the potency, toxicity, or addictive properties of cannabis, but maybe that's too specific. I don't know. I mean, I think Hawaii has some version of that. Oregon has some version of that. Nevada.
What if it's instead of known, it could be like known to have harmful impacts to health in the human environment.
I don't think we know any of that, though. That's the problem.
I'm saying
is-
if FDA, God help them, ever makes that designation, we would know.
Yes, but for now, we don't, there's nothing that we know for certain. It's all unknown.
Yeah, I mean, you could
Feels
invert
like-
it so that you could
Yeah.
reject a product for which there's insufficient safety data to make the board comfortable.
Seems like every product would fall into that category.
Depending on how you look at it, yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, so as far as just what we need to do today, I mean, I feel like you kind of know the gist of what the board is looking for. Are you able to workshop just a 6th provision, a sub 6 to gives us at least some flexibility if we kind of learn of the next vitamin E acetate situation that we can remove it.
I think we take a shot at it.
Are we still able to vote on the full package then and just adjust it for LCAR? Is that?
We could take a break and.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I could come back to you with an actual text for 6 and see if that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay. All right. Thank you, Gabe. Moving on.
So there was 2.2.4, the one that we knew would be.
Any other substantive comments? I think they're really focused on those two areas, the nutritional supplement and then the meat and dairy and the water pH.
I know time and temperature control have ruffled some feathers. I just want to remind folks that there's a difference between it being necessary and it being, you know, how you want your product to be sold, whether at a room temperature or at a not room temperature, refrigerated temperature. You know, I've used the example, it's like buying chocolate in the checkout aisle of the grocery store. On a hot day, you might want go home and put that in your freezer or your refrigerator, because it holds its consistency a little bit better, but that's not a food safety risk if you don't do that. So I don't think any of the beverages would be impacted, anything like that, because you could still sell them at room temperature
It's not, yeah, yeah,
if you wanted to.
some of them, yeah.
I'm good.
And the only other thing I had to call your attention to, unless you may all have comments that caught your eye that you want to bring back up, but is the safe harbor provision added to the what was the potentially intoxicating cannabinoid rule. Let me see if I can find that for you. Okay, so here's in previous meetings, there was a lot of concern about interfering with the ability of Vermont manufacturers and cultivators of hemp to export products that, though they would be prohibited and are intended to be prohibited for sale in this state, are lawful in other states. And a lot of protests said, you know, you're just hurting us without doing anything for the public safety if other states have made that decision. And so the board at its last meeting added what you see here as 2.17.3D. And this provided that the prohibition shall not apply to a product that is prohibited by this rule solely because its delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol content exceeds serving or package limits, and not for any other reason, provided the product is produced and transferred exclusively for export by lawful means to a state where the product lawfully may be sold to consumers. In other words, you can't violate the other states' laws, but as long as you're shipping to states that find it acceptable, it would no longer be subject to the rule.
So one point of clarification, I know we've talked about this, but just for the folks listening, I know that there's at least a handful of businesses that operate an independent hemp store that are not producing these products themselves, but they also have an e-store footprint. Would they be able to sell those products out of state, or is this just producer to out of state?
You're talking about like an in-state broker?
Sure. So like, you know, there's people producing these products to an in-state hemp store, hemp product store, who also have an online footprint, not just a Main Street footprint.
I think they'd be covered because the focus of the exemption is the product itself. And so if you have an exempt product,
I guess it's not entering the stream of commerce.
Everybody
to the
who
public,
touches the product is protected because it's the product rather than the
Okay.
entity that's the subject of the.
Okay, just wanted that point.
So they can come, it can come into the state so long as when it's sold, it's going.
The precursors, of course, yes, could come into
Okay.
the state. It's that the finished product for sale to the retail consumer is prohibited here if it trips the other wires. But there are, of course, many CBD products that don't, and they're fine. Oh, and this reminds me of a change I forgot. We have been asked to remove chlorophyll from the definition of full spectrum in relation to similar products. And that was thought about, found to be meritorious, and chlorophyll is now stricken so that you can be a full spectrum product without preserving chlorophyll. So that's everything, or at least everything I remember. So if anybody wants
I had-
me to jump to particular
I had
stuff,
one question to go back to 2.2.10. One of the things I think we removed was the placement of the label and symbol, which we had, one of the things that we had added and have now removed, I think, is saying that it has to be on the base layer of the packaging. And I wanted to make sure that we were all comfortable with that. Like even the symbol does not have to be on the base layer of packaging. So if you have multiple layers of packaging, so let's say you have in a box and then you have like a glass jar inside that box, the warning label and the symbol do not have to be on that interior piece of packaging. Is that right? That's what we took
Yeah.
out. I want to make sure that we're comfortable taking that out.
So I think you mentioned like a drink or some sort of consumable product
Yeah.
that was in a larger package. And then once you take it out of that larger package, there's no real way for anyone to know that it has THC in it.
Right. Well, I mean, it says that it has certain milligrams of THC, but that warning label, like the Mr. Yuck sticker, right? That would trigger something for someone who maybe doesn't read or can't read or isn't sure, that's not there.
Yeah.
I think the flip side to that is there are certain products like dabbable products that come in such a small little glass container that it's just physically impossible to get all that information on that glass container.
Right. And so I'm suggesting just the symbol.
Oh, okay.
it's certainly fine with me.
Yeah.
Great.
Does it, can it be on the bottom, or the top, or the side?
Where, yeah,
Wherever.
whatever we do with other, yes,
Okay. The
think it
symbol
just
meaning
needs to be
both
on
of
there.
those symbols or just
Yeah,
it contains THC?
both of those. I think they have to go together. I think the way this is written is that they have to go together.
Okay. Just cognizant of space concern with how small some of these products are packaged.
Yeah, I don't think we put, is there a size? I don't think we set a particular size of those, if I remember.
I think we were trying to, and the
I think that
label
we're
update
removed.
is just all
Yeah,
gone.
yeah. That was the only thing that I think that is worth not waiting for further consideration.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Got that? Is that all right?
Yes, so there's
Yes.
consensus that that one should
Yeah.
happen. Okay, I may bug you afterward. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, I was wondering about 2.2 let's see, it's 2.10, somewhere in there. It was related to integrated licensees, sourcing from, small cultivators. I was reminded that that section was time limited, by statute. So let me see. Let's see. 2.10.6, and then I think there's one other place where it says this, where it just says integrated license shall abide by the requirement of section 10 of Act 62 regarding the purchase of cannabis from small cultivators. If you look at Act 62, it says section 10, between August 1st of 2022 and October 1st of 2022, 25% of cannabis flower sold by integrated license shall be obtained from small cultivators. So in some respects, it doesn't matter to leave this in, but it's certainly a vestige. I mean, it's certainly,
It may lead to confusion. We could, I'd hate to renumber everything south of it, so we
That's right.
could, what we could do is cheat and just write repealed in brackets.
Okay.
And leave it unused.
that's fine.
I mean, I still like the concept, but I certainly recognize the business end of this. I mean, there's a cultural shift out there where small cultivators don't even want to sell products to integrated players, which is their own decision, but that leaves some integrateds struggling to find a product to satisfy that statutory or old statutory obligation.
I think it would be worth revisiting that in the future in the context of 1.4.9. Like
Yeah.
if there's another tier of retailer or operator that we should, right now it's like 2 and 10 employees, but at some point when the
Right.
market's more mature, we might say it's 2, 10 and 20 or something like
Yeah,
that. And adding something like that would make sense.
yeah, I'm not even weighing in on whether it's a good or bad policy. It's really just, it was time limited for
Sure.
statute. So I just feel like,
Mhm.
unless we kind of just decide that we want this policy right now, that, we
I
should.
don't want to make Gabe write anything else on
Yes.
the fly. I say it out loud so that I remember it
Yeah,
myself in the
yeah.
future.
Great. Well, so Gabe, you want us to take a pause, or should we just hold the vote to the end of the meeting? We can kind of continue to move through the agenda.
Yeah, if you want to continue to move through the agenda, I can try to come up with a sentence or two. And
Yeah.
I'll plug myself.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everybody.
Take a stab and send it to you.
Oh, yes.
So, Bryn,
Yes.
you want to pause for public comment?
I thought we were doing it after the rules before the vote. I don't remember
Oh,
the
it
agenda on the
is
top of my head.
actually. Yeah, sorry, it is on the agenda to pause. for public.
Do we want to wait until the crafting is done?
Okay, so we'll pause for public comment when that sentence is done and before we vote on it.
Okay.
But we will just, while we wait for that, I think move on to the executive director report.
Whoops. You get one shot at this. You screwed it up. You have to try again. Okay. Okay, so this your executive director's report this month is a little bit abbreviated. Given that we had there were a number of factors that led to it being a little bit of an abbreviated data reporting this month. But I anticipate that we'll see some more new types of data reports at the August meeting, given that it's a little bit of a longer stretch between this one and the August meeting, since your August meeting is the last week of the month. And at that point, we'll also have some additional renewal information and also some additional information about how much canopy is being utilized by our cultivators. So just a preface there. So I'm starting out this month with just some preliminary data on the results of the survey that we sent out last week, immediately after the flooding. We sent out a survey to all of our licensees. We've heard feedback from 150 of them as of this morning. So the survey was really just a brief survey that was intended to gather some information about whether the licensee was impacted and what that impact looked like. So this slide summarizes the data that we've received so far. Like I said, we have gotten really a small subset of responses. We've gotten 150 responses. So we need a lot more responses before we can give a complete picture of the impact on the cannabis industry. But since it's a board meeting day, I just put together the results of the responses so far for you to take a look at.
Just please, everyone who's watching, please fill out that survey. It's really critical that we kind of document everything that's happened and share that with the kind of decision makers here in Montpelier, because it's not likely that any sort of FEMA or SBA funding is going to be available to the cannabis industry.
Yeah, what is that, a third-ish of our total licensees? I'd like to see that number go up, even if you have minimal impact. Hopefully you do. Please take a couple moments to fill that out.
So of the 150 licensees that have responded, 10 have indicated that they were impacted by the flood. So 5 of them were tier 1 cultivators of all types, indoor, outdoor, and mixed. 2 were tier 2 cultivators, 1 was a tier 2 manufacturer, and 2 were retailers. So a summary of the damage sustained by those reporting licensees, cultivation impact. I think it was really, at the time that these folks responded, it was really too soon to tell the extent of the damage, but reported somewhere between 50 and 75% plant loss. And most of those indicated that they were doing some replanting to see if they could ameliorate some of that loss. The retail impact, one of the reported impacted retailers needed to move their operations early, and 1 lost a few days of sales due to road closures, and neither reported any product loss as a result of the flood. And then the manufacturing impact was a pretty substantial equipment damage and temporary business closure, but really minimal product loss. So of the licensees that reported being impacted, 3 are economic empowerment and 1 is a social equity licensee. So that is the preliminary data. Any questions about that before I move on? So upcoming public engagement, as the chair mentioned in the opening remarks, we are beginning our medical program study committee meetings, and the first one will be held on August 8th, 10 to 12. And as the chair mentioned, we will post the link to participate in that remote event on our website. So moving on to the licensing data. Starting with the chart, which is looking just really consistent month after month. This is the chart that shows the average days that takes staff to process an application from its submission to its approval. So this includes the amount of time that the application is being reviewed by staff here and also in the hands of the applicant as they gather all the information that they need as a result of our letter to them asking for more information. So this is broken out by license type. You can see that we are just extremely consistent month after month. So we may not need to see this slide every month. We may do a year-end wrap up on it from now on. So this is the monthly review of new license application submissions. You can see our numbers in July have dropped pretty significantly after the large numbers of applications that came in April and May. So this does not include our cycling renewals. It's just new applications. And here's a breakout of those renewal submissions since our last board meeting. So one of the reports that staff is working developing as we get a little further into the renewal cycle is taking a comparative look at renewals based on the status of the licensee. So determining what percentage of our licensees are renewing our social equity and economic. So that we'll have some comparative data on that probably at the next meeting. So
Do we have data too on folks who've just chosen not to renew?
yes,
Okay.
that will be included. So
we're getting into the ramp up of when we started
yes,
increasing initial licensees last year.
yep, exactly. I think that I heard this morning that we have our first retail renewals that are coming in now. So that's a signal of how far we've come. Okay, so new submissions by license type. So this just breaks out the same thing by the type of license that people are applying for. And then the next set of slides give you some information about the issued license types. So this slide shows all issued indoor cultivation licenses. So it shows both the number of issued licenses, the number of renewals for that license type, and it also gives you information about how many of this license type are in the process. So for indoor cultivators, we've got 88 issued, small tier 1 cultivators, 14 tier 2s, 7 tier 3s, and 1 tier 5. You can see the renewal numbers there that will grow month by month. So issued outdoor cultivation licenses, 113 tier 1s, 22 tier 2s, 10 tier 3s, 3 tier 4s, 5 tier 5s. And then here are the mixed numbers. And here's our manufacturing numbers. So tier 2 manufacturers, we've got 43 issued as of this month. And you can see those renewals are rolling in as well. And then this is all other license types. So again, showing how many licenses have been issued for each of these license types. And no renewals for retailers yet, but we have had a wholesale renewal.
And the nature of the amendments is generally name changes or principal changes, things of that nature.
Typically not a principal change. Those typically come to the board. Principal changes, location changes are considered renewals. But yes, if there's a name change or some other sort of clerical change to the information, those are amendments that are processed just in the day-to-day work and don't come to the board for review. This one kind of, we've issued 1,123 employee ID cards as
That's double from last month, right?
Not sure if it's double, but it's quite a bit.
And it'll be helpful, I think, if we're thinking about flood recovery, obviously there's cultivators, retailers, manufacturers losing equipment and product, but how many employees aren't able to work or laid off or just,
Yeah.
not able to work or aren't being paid right now? I think we want to hear from employees as well.
We still have out there the employee ID card survey that I started months ago. It's still like some results continue to trickle in. I think another like round of asking people to complete that would be good. That would help.
Yeah.
Tell us how many 123 are actually employed and how many just hold a card.
So next slide gives a summary of the total submissions that our licensing team have received since the last board meeting. So 43 new licensing application submissions, 233 product registration new submissions, and 83 employee ID cards submissions. Here is your retail location chart demonstrating areas of density. This has been changing pretty slowly over the last couple of months. The only change since last month is that Brandon moved up in the list. They now have one. They've got 3 licensed and 1 retail license in the queue. So next slide, this shows our canopy capacity as it's changing, as our licensing staff is processing renewals. So we've got just about a 30,000 square foot increase in outdoor canopy capacity since March, and 1,000 square feet canopy capacity decrease for indoor canopy. Oops, sorry. Doesn't want to stay on this slide. So we'll have some additional reporting about this at the next month. And also we will start to compare our canopy capacity size to our utilized canopy size. We'll have a better idea of that utilized canopy number once people's outdoor grows are getting to a more mature spot in the season. Okay, so I'll move on to product registration. So these numbers are current as of yesterday. We've had a little over 3,000 total product registration applications. And then we've got all of the statuses here broken out. So you can see that the majority of them are registered. And then we've got 110 that are sitting in submitted status, which means they have not begun to be reviewed by staff. 22 are currently under review. 36 have been resubmitted, and that should really be switched with incomplete, because once it's incomplete, it's after the staff has done their review and they've sent out an incomplete letter, and then they come back into resubmitted status. So, and then the rest of those statuses are self-explanatory. So here we get into product registration by product type. This chart is looking pretty consistent over the last couple of months. You can see we've still got about 75% of our registered products are flower. And the other categories that are growing quickly are the extracts, which includes concentrates, edibles, and I think tinctures is remaining pretty static at 2%. Yep. Other includes topicals, clones, transdermal patches. Okay, so now we've got a little bit of data to report from the compliance team. So we're still averaging around 100 inspections a month. Since this is a short period between this board meeting and the last one. The total number of inspections is 68, but that's still right around 100 a month. There's a breakdown of what types of licensees we're inspecting month by month. Here's a summary of investigations since the last board meeting. We've got 4 new investigations underway, and you can see the sort of subject of those investigations underneath. We've received 17 new complaints since the last board meeting, and we've not issued any new notices of violation since the last board meeting. Medical program.
Have the
Any questions?
inspections resumed? I know we had to take a pause while the state offices were shut.
Yes, the pause, I think was not statewide, but there was a pause in the central Vermont area for a couple of days. But yes, all inspections have resumed statewide at this point. Okay, medical program data. This is not a lot of change since the last board meeting. The one thing that I can report is that we have one new patient between this board meeting and the last. I think we have been shedding patients over the last several months, and this month we did not. We gained one. So, gotta look for the good news, right? So I think we'll pause there for if you want to return to.
Why don't we do that? Yeah, I gave a few willing. Here, are you ready for us?
I'm ready for the big reveal. You can tell me, you can tell me it's terrible. But with thanks to Bryn for framing it up, but let me see. So this is in keeping with the idea, it would expand the definition of adulterated a little bit to focus on more than just packaging and storage. And so we would make up for whatever was given up by the removal from 2.4.2 by adding subcategory 6 that defines adulterated to include a product that contains any additive or substance that may increase the potency, toxicity, carcinogenicity, or addictive potential of the product, or that otherwise may present an enhanced risk to human health. So a little bit of a catch-all there. The early part of that is phrase very commonly found among the states that have tried to do something similar.
That works for me.
That's good. Well done. Thank you.
Carcinogenicity is a tongue twister.
That came from and some other states, but yes.
That's great. All
Thank you.
right.
Well, thank you.
So, why don't we pause for public comment, before we vote on this? We'll do it the same way we always do. If you joined via the link, please raise your virtual hand. Do our best at calling you in the order that you raise your hand, and then we'll move to people that joined via phone.
I promise to stand in for Nellie and call out the callers.
Okay. You're up for it.
Okay, and then now it numbers them, so it's helpful. Jesse Lynn, you have won the race, and we'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate going quickly in first because I'm waiting for a few patients and could happen at any time emergencies. So thank you for allowing public comment. As always, my name is Jessie Lynn. I'm a nurse that works with vulnerable population, but I'm also a state educator for cannabis here in Vermont. I would ask you to please work to regulate rather than prohibit dairy and refrigerated products. Prohibition is the way we've dealt with this plant for decades, which we all know is wrong. It's more difficult to regulate and easier to prohibit, but please find a way with the amount of taxes pouring in. There has to be a way to afford personnel to do so. There are a few businesses that are not only doing that are only doing drinks, and this rule will be detrimental to them. With H270 and the changes to the medical program, I'm hoping there's a way to let patients know of these changes, such as increased plant count. As a patient myself, I've not received any info explaining the changes that affect the program. Please also share with us the timeline to expect medical dispensaries to become compliant in full panel third-party lab testing for consumer safety and staff education. Up until this point, adult use has had more consumer safety testing and education, and medical patients would like to understand when they can have that assurance as well. Please let patients know how the medical program funds are being used to benefit patients, whether through reduced fees and discounts or education specifically for patients themselves. Please use the medical funds for the adult use or the adult use taxes to hire medical professionals for the medical program. Patients deserve that. Please also mandate the medical program test terpenes as well, as that is just as, if not more important than THC for many reasons I won't spend time explaining here. Adult use wise, please let us know when the CCB will explain what expectations they have for continuing education as written in the rules. And please let the community know if the currently approved educators for employees will need to be reapproved annually, as many of the programs are not teaching updated compliance and overall include very minimal education. Also, please look to find a better company and way to do owner's fingerprints, as $450 annual fee is daunting. Adult use has created a great and very strict advertising program. And now that we have those policies in place, I would hope those same restrictions are being considered for alcohol and tobacco as well. And if not, we need to ask ourselves why. As far as samples you mentioned today, please consider allowing 14 samples at 2 grams rather than 7 samples at 4 grams. The best way for a bud tender to help a consumer, including consumer safety, is to understand the product themselves and have the option to try that product before they sell it. As far as vaping or vaping pen definitions and education, please work with the Vermont Department of Health to change and update their mandated educational flyer to not just warn the dangers of vaping, but to explain the difference between vaping oil versus flower. And lastly, as Pepper stated, we're experimenting with some of the products on the market. Please consider implementing licenses for research and on-site consumption, and I will help you get and do that research, as I have been able to get the research work on one of the most biased topics there is, published internationally, and think we can do this important work to show how consumer safety and education really does matter to Vermont. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jesse Lynn.
Next in line is Dave Silverman, and thank you, Dave, for your written comments.
Thank you, Gabe. I appreciate the board's efforts here and the response you've made to the comments on 2.2.4. Real quick on 2.8.8, I appreciate the changes you made there, which I gave written comment on as well, especially regarding limits on the amount of flour that can be given to retailer employees. I see that you did still keep the limitation on for the purpose for which those samples can be given to employees, and you're limiting it to in order to determine whether to make the product available to sell. I think that is kind of missing the point a little bit. That's not why we give employees samples. We give employees samples to educate them so that they can speak knowledgeably to our consumers. And it's very important that we retain the ability to give our employees samples of our products for those purposes. Otherwise, you're going to really harm the customer experience. And if I may, very quickly regarding Rule 2.2.4 and food safety, just say shame on the Vermont Department of Health and especially its senior leadership team for continuing to put Vermonters' health and safety at risk just because they won't let go of their anti-drug biases that not only don't have a place in state law anymore, but that the vast majority of Vermonters long ago rejected. Whether it's prohibiting certified safe kitchens from being used to make cannabis foods, or repeatedly standing in the way of proven harm reduction measures, it's clear that VDOH leadership is far more interested in saving drug users' souls than they are in protecting their physical safety. Get with the times, Dr. Levine. We shouldn't have to wait for the drug war dinosaurs to go extinct before we have sensible drug policy in this state. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Lost track of my next person. Next, Tito Byrne.
Hi there. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
So I agree with David and Jesse Lynn. Also, I very much support the testing for mycotoxins and getting into this aspergillus issue, because it's really limiting what I consider the best product that can possibly be made. And we definitely don't want to see a race to synthetics, because that's really essentially what ends up happening, is everybody tries to avoid microbials, even though a lot of them are just fine. And thanks to Travis from Gas Factory on doing all that work. Also this whole living soil style of growing is very new to the scene. So, it's important that we don't hold it back, because I think it is, like I said, the best possible product that can be made. And I think that's what Vermont wants to be known for. With employees, when an employee has been maintained by the same company, it feels like the employer shouldn't have to foot the bill for the new record checks. It is really expensive, and I mean, every 2 years, feels like something we did once, and if it has to be done all the time, it feels like it should be an expense covered by the state. Also, with renewing the packaging waiver for child deterrent, specifically Elevate compostable bags, it's really important for us to have the option of those bags. The jars and obviously the buildup of glass and all that stuff is just awful, and it builds up fast. And it's a great solution to be able to lower our costs and lower our footprint. So I love it there. And that's it. So thank you all. Hopefully you have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Michael Denal.
Some of you may know me from Charles River Insurance. I did end up making a move over to World Insurance Associates, leading their national cannabis program. I wanted to speak on having samples for employees. I think this is actually very important from a risk management standpoint, pertaining to product liability suits, specifically because I've worked here in Massachusetts for the last 5 years, experiencing a lot of different retailers, approvals and complaints about the processes in which a bud tender goes about recommending products. One specific scenario, a bud tender improperly recommended a very high THC percentage joint to a new cannabis customer. The customer did have some severe paranoia and was threatening to sue the dispensary. And a qualified bud tender then recommended another product to counteract that effect. Not cured, but it did help the patient to a point where they were very appreciative of that bud tender's knowledge and expertise on the product itself, therefore avoiding any product liability suits. If it wasn't for this bud tender's knowledge on the different products, their effects on a person, and how to properly advise a consumer to use this product, there would have been a product liability suit and insurance would have been coming into play. Therefore, I do think it is important for different samples to be available to employees of these dispensaries. So I am available for other comments on risk management and insurance in the cannabis space on a national space, but Vermont is very near and dear to my heart. Very much appreciative of the work that you're doing to help further this industry along. And Godspeed to everybody being affected by the floods. I'm very much available to help out in any way, shape, or form. So thank you and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bernardo is next.
Hi, thank you guys for having this open forum. I submitted some language with VGA on section 2.6.4 and additives regarding the terpene cap, 10%. I'm reviewing the language we submitted now, but in reality, I think the intention, or on this side, the thinking is putting a 10% terpene cap is not outlandish, but I think that that should be that cap should only be considered when terpenes are being added to the product, which the CCB is, discussing requiring a label for added terpenes, which I fully agree with. I just don't think that we should require a terpene test for products when there's nothing being added to them and they're just being naturally extracted as whole product. For example, ice water extracts or single pass BHO or, not PHO, sorry, and and the ethanol products. So just the way that we wrote it, it says may not the full terpene manufactured cannabis.
Bernardo.
Hi, did I lose you guys?
Yeah. Well, it's just you're fading in and out a little bit. I don't know if it's a microphone issue or what, but it's been happening the whole comment, but I've caught everything up until that last section.
So I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
We can, yeah.
I'm just on my phone. So basically, the language we submitted was Total terpene content of a manufactured cannabis product intended for inhalation of vaporized formulation may not exceed 10% by weight and added terpenes. All terpenes added to a cannabis product must be naturally occurring in the cannabis plant. Any concentrated terpenes added to the cannabis product shall be disclosed on the label. So I just wanted to clarify that the 10% cap should really only be considered when terpenes are being added, not to test terpenes that are naturally occurring in that product or in that flower and extracted as such. I know it gets a little tricky, but I'm just hesitant to require terpene tests for concentrate products when nothing's being added to them. I
Yeah.
think that the safety cap should really be there for added products, but that's
Okay.
all I wanted to say. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bernardo. I think that is what it says.
That's what we're attempting. Yeah.
So I don't think we actually need that change. The way that it's written actually does that. Maybe we can be clearer in guidance, but I think it does.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, let me just find our next. Okay, Janet Carey. Maybe Janet stepped away. Gaston Weed.
How you doing today, everybody? It's Ebo from Gaston. Well, you just kind of answered my question / comment about the terpenes. If it is going to be not natural reoccurring terpenes in extracts, which we're definitely hitting, 9.9 to 11% right now, nothing added. So if you guys, what you just said is it's just going to be added terpenes, which I fully agree with. So thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to Meredith Mann. Meredith stepped away. This brings us to TFO.
Here, sorry about that.
Meredith.
Sorry.
ahead.
I just wanted to jump in. Thank you all. And just say, first of all, that as far as the health department goes, please don't punish people who are experienced in this industry and compliant. And customers really, really deserve to be able to come to the legal market to get these products, and deterring any product is just sending them somewhere else to get it. I also wanted the more people talk about terpenes, the more clear it is. Education is failing. We need better education on this for all bud tenders and staff. I think that some of these bud tender trainings that we're offering are too short and don't give quite enough information for people to be informed. The next thing that I want to add is samples. So important. As somebody who was a supervisor on the medical side, I was the only medical patient for 2 years in the medical dispensary that had any idea of the product. The supervisors didn't, the other bud tenders didn't. Everybody had to go to me, and it is so detrimental on the medical side, let alone the recreational side, to not have bud tenders have as much knowledge about these products as possible. And I do agree it can be a liability if you are recommending a product to somebody that is not right for them. So I really encourage you to listen to us on that. And that is it for now. I did make another public comment and appreciate all your time and efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to PGO.
Hi, this is Greg Yelnowski with Pine Grove Organics. Yeah, 2 comments. One, wanted to second Dave and Meredith's comments about samples and qualify the samples for employees as educational rather than employee samples. That's my suggestion. I think education is the reason why we give employees samples, and vendor decisions are made maybe in tandem with employees sometimes, but more like business management / ownership decisions. That's just a designation I've seen in other states that might work. Also just wanted to second both of their sentiments on public health and the Department of Health and how we're working with them. It's disappointing to say the least.
Thank you. The next commenter is Scott Sparks.
Hello, thank you. I had to drop out of the meeting for about 20 minutes for another meeting, so I may have missed this. But as a retailer, I'm just looking for clarification on the ability to continue to sell these, I'll call them banned products now. And will we be receiving a list or emailed or somehow communicated to where we're at? And I'm just unclear. And again, I may have missed some direction there. And then I just wanted to confirm what Meredith and Dave and I'm sorry, the previous callers, I don't remember his name, but what they said about the samples, as well as I think we need more education. And I'm very disappointed in the Department of Health. That's it.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up. Did anyone else want to speak?
If you join via phone, you can unmute yourself by hitting *6. I don't know if anyone has, but. Okay. Oh, Bobby Berg, the last word.
Thanks for giving me a moment. I just wanted to echo most of these previous comments and, express that I'm disheartened by how this whole 2.24 situation has played out. And I genuinely do hope y'all will in earnest, pursue changing that when the appetite exists on the Department of Health side. God willing that ever happens. I particularly wanted to echo Jessie Lynn's comments in their entirety. And she also asked me to ask if medical dispensaries are allowed to sell refrigerated products. And if so, that, they should probably be held to the same standard, considering they've been selling patients moldy edibles for about a decade. Thanks a bunch. Have a good one.
Thank you. Any last comments? All right, I will close the public comment window. So we're in the middle of two items on the agenda right now, unfortunately. But why don't we close one of them out? Is there anything that we heard from public comment that we would want to change, anything that we've done in our rules? I think the main things we heard about are sampling. The purpose of sampling is defined a lot on 2.2.4 and dairy and meat products. And the 2.6.4 question about terpenes.
I'm happy to amend the sampling stuff to include an educational purpose in addition to is this product right to sell in your establishment? If we need to,
yeah, I feel like it's captured. I'm fine with doing that too. I do feel like that's like splitting hairs in a way that we're certainly not.
No, I know that we're not, but if it gives folks that level of clarity to add for educational purposes,
I'm missing something in the language. What is the flour limit for employee samples? I see concentrates and extracts.
it's in a different section, I think. I know it's there because I remember that being in my wheelhouse when we wrote the rules. And I mean, I think I wrote this with the intent of education, meaning I want to sell this in my establishment, but I get educating for the purposes of understanding that specific strain and its impact on
your purpose to sell, though. I mean, it's all. I feel like it's splitting hairs in a way that we don't necessarily need to.
But I get that. Yeah. But if folks want that explicit language to feel more comfortable in how they are providing samples to their employees, I think I'm fine with making that accommodation if the two of you agree.
That's fine.
Yes.
It doesn't bother me at all. So for the purpose of sale or educational purposes or for any purpose?
Sure, for educating, for educating employees. I mean, I do want to be clear, our understanding of the existing language is it allowed educational samples because you're either deciding to stock something new or deciding to continue to stock it based on what.
I think our only biggest concern, or at least my biggest concern with sampling when we wrote this was I didn't want samples to replace you getting a paycheck. Because I'm sure there's somebody out there that will work for free weed.
I think that's already defined in the Fair Labor Standards Act.
I know,
as to
but
What you
I'm
can
just-
include.
I'm just recalling
Yes.
on one of the
Yes.
discussion points we had with including sample limits.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to include for educational purposes in addition to whatever it says. I can't remember.
That's easy to do if it's the business of the board.
Okay, and then, do we need to change anything in the 2.6.4, Britain, the terpene?
I think that to make that abundantly clear that you are limiting that, the additional terpenes to 10%, we should add a word to 22 point, wherever that is.
Yeah, we can do that. I do want to be clear, 2.6.4 is captioned additives, so we would.
Yes.
I'm pretty I wouldn't, but it doesn't hurt to say it twice.
Well, I would prefer not to say it twice. You know, I mean, this is language from New Jersey, I feel like, so, you know, and I think Nevada as well. So, you know, it's a little bit time tested. So.
And the intent is to just keep those products at terpene levels that are naturally
occurring. Yeah.
For those that are wondering.
Okay. All right. Well, then can we approve subject to the changes that you presented to us?
You're comfortable? Sure.
1 and 2 together as a package?
We could do the whole package.
1,
2, and 4, although we haven't talked.
We already did 4.
We didn't really get into 4 because nothing changed.
I thought we voted on that last week.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you did that. I'm sorry. Okay. 1 and 2.
Just kidding.
It's hard to keep up these days.
Was there a motion that you have for that?
Yes, I move that the board accept the amendments to rules 1 and 2 as presented to us in this meeting.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. So now we do have to pause for our social equity executive session, where we will be considering a staff recommendation around social equity status. I think I don't know how long it'll take, maybe like 15 minutes. So why don't we just give a motion for that?
Yes, I
Julie?
do. I move that the CCB go into executive session to consider confidential attorney-client communications made for the purposes of providing professional legal services to the body, and that the executive session is required because premature general public knowledge regarding such communications would clearly place the board at a substantial disadvantage. I further move to invite Susanna Davis and Jay Green from the Department of Racial Equity to the executive session.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I assume about 15 minutes. So let's come back just a little bit before 3.
We have Nellie's fancy PowerPoint. We will be back in 15 minutes.
We don't.
It's in the general, it's in the SharePoint. The place where all.
We'll be back in
things are.
15 minutes and we'll find
Okay.
that screen.
Right. We are back. Again, James Pepper with the Cannabis Control Board. It is 2:58, July 19th, 2023, and we are back from our executive session. Again, we don't make any decisions in executive session. We were just hearing the facts of a social equity applicant. And I think now, Bryn, we are ready to hear the all of the staff recommendations for licensure and social equity status.
Okay, here we are again. So staff has 2 recommendations for approval of social equity status. And that is submission number 2850 and submission number 1882. So staff is recommending that these businesses have social equity status because an applicant meets the criteria for social equity business applicant as defined in board rule. And next are staff recommendations for licensure. So the list on the following couple of pages are applicants that have demonstrated compliance with all of the requirements for their license as set out in board rule and in statute. So I won't read the list. We've got 23 new licenses that board is recommending approval for this month.
We're gonna be able to get this up by the end of the day.
Yes, I believe so.
Is there anyone who's joined by phone? I guess, you know, I don't mind if we just,
Want me to run through them?
no, it's okay. If there's no one joined by phone, then everyone can see them.
I think that there is.
You just quickly go back to the prior page.
Yep.
See anybody by phone.
Well, we'll get this up on the website as soon as possible.
And here is the list of staff recommendations for license renewal. We've got 13 renewals. We are recommending for approval this month. That's your list.
Great. Any questions for Bryn? Is there a motion to approve?
I move that the board accept each of these recommendations as presented to us in the meeting.
Hello,
Okay.
can anyone hear?
Any comment?
The
Okay.
list was not the list that matches the email sent out.
Not time for public comment yet.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving through the agenda. We have one last public comment session. So if you please raise your virtual hands. And why don't we start with Parker Rice?
Can you hear me?
Can hear you, yes.
Thank you. So the list of approved retailers, cultivators, and the rest that was just looked at was not the one posted on the website. And I was wondering if someone could mention that. Our business, for example, was not on the list just approved, and it was on the email agenda.
Okay, well, it does say pretty clearly on the email that that list is subject to change. And there is a number of factors that happened in between the publishing of that list and today that might have impacted that list, you know, flood related and otherwise. So I think someone will just have to reach out to your, someone will just have to reach out to you about it. If you can talk to your compliance agent. Yeah, can you just mention your business name, please?
Timeline Products.
Timeline Products.
It's also listed on the agenda for today on the website.
Just saying we could take more comment while Kimberly looks just to
Okay,
make sure.
okay, yeah. Okay, thanks for the comment. Someone will be in touch with you about it. Stephanie?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
We can.
Hey, Stephanie Waterman with White River Grow Pro, and I just wanted to bring the board's attention to our petition on asking you to reconsider the THC limits in hemp products. I submitted my petition on Monday at your deadline for public comment, but as of today, the petition, including the online, is now at 497 signatories, and I hope the board will consider that. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Oh, Fred Moran. Your hands up.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I also share the same concern as the previous business that wasn't listed on today's meeting for licensure, the adult use program licensure. My business name is Vermont Greenery, and I was told by my compliance officer that today would be my day, so I'm concerned about that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Fred.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Please just raise your virtual hand. Emery? Emery Ross, are you there?
Sorry, I missed the unmute button. I share the same concerns as the last commenter. I was also on the list to get approved for my manufacturing license. I was approved as a grow last month, and I was not listed on the approved ones that everyone else, or some of the businesses, sounds like some might have been left off, for Vermont Natural Extracts LLC. So
okay,
I share the same
We'll
concern.
take a
something
look.
got-
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Yep. Thank you. Is it Dan?
Dan?
I'm driving delivering today, so I missed part of the meeting, so I didn't hear what rules were changed. But for public comment today, I actually wanted to talk about product registration, especially for outdoor growers. You know, we have a seasonal crop, and so a lot of us are planning ahead for, you know, depths and fall harvests. And the comment that I wanted to make about the product registration is it's going to cause delays and hindrance for a lot of us getting new product to market this coming season. And I was wondering, you know, for instance, it's like you can plan ahead the varieties that you're growing and get all your packaging together. We want to have COAs. I was wondering if the CCB would be willing to consider some type of fast track situation for product registration for outdoor growers. So, you know, it's a really big part of our business. This is seasonal. So if we're trying to harvest something, you know, for instance, in October, the beginning of October, want to get it off the dry lines, trimmed, cured, tested out to market, product registration could, you know, cause people 3 or 4 weeks. So I just kind of wanted to bring that thought, you know, to you guys and see if we could kind of work together on some type of timeline for product registrations, maybe pre-approving all the packaging before stuff is harvested and then just waiting on the COAs. Something like that, I think, would be really helpful for outdoor farmers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Dan. Any other public comments?
Is there any chance the board would consider making a motion to look at the original list posted? Because the next meeting is not for quite some time, and our compliance officers did suggest us. We were on the list, and it does create an operational and business issue when we're pushing out timelines so much without notice like this. I realize you guys have a lot to do, but just hoping you guys would consider it.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. We're looking into it right now as we speak, actually, and whether that means we hold this meeting open or we call a special meeting, or perhaps there's a reason why there was the discrepancy between the email posting and the list that we just approved. You know, we're trying to dig into that right now. Yeah, so why don't we close the public comment window? We're gonna, well, hold on, Luca, just 1 second. Why don't we close the public comment window after we hear this last hand that was raised, and then take a 5-minute break and regroup, and we'll see about why there was this discrepancy. So Luca Fernandez, did you want to make a public comment?
Hi, yeah, just similar concern. Almost embarrassed to bring it up in public, but it's about the social equity list. Commonwealth Cannabis, I had thought would be on that. That was thought that would have been a pretty simple thing on whether I'm Hispanic or not. So if if that was not a clerical error, I would be pretty interested to know the rationale behind that one.
What was the name of the business?
Commonweal Cannabis, which I was glad to see was on the other recommendation list.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So why don't we take a quick break here? We'll come back at 3:15 and hopefully just give some explanation. Okay. All right. We are back. It is now 3:18 on July 19th, 2023. Thank you to all the commenters who raised this concern for us. It actually was a clerical error on our part. I think the list that we emailed out is relatively accurate. And so now we have an updated list that has at least the people that have brought to our attention that we left them off on it.
This was a cut and paste error.
Happens to the best of
Thankfully, a
us.
first of its kind.
Yeah.
So, I'm just gonna run through all of the, recommendation slides again, because we've got to change also to, the social equity approval list. So we've got one additional, recommendation for social equity status approval, and that's submission number 3491. And we have, another slide full of, recommended approvals for the board. So these are, were left off the original version, but they were included in the email notification that went out, and that's exactly why we do this. So these are the folks that were not in the previous iteration, but should have been.
Apologies and thank you for raising your hand virtually.
Yeah, thanks for paying attention, everyone. And is there a motion to approve the staff recommendations?
I move that the board accept each of the recommendations, including the amended recommendations as presented to us by staff in this meeting.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. But thank you for bearing with us, and congratulations to everyone who was licensed today. And really want to thank everyone who's volunteering and helping with flood. All right. I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.